One kid killing the parents is a bad seed. Two kids killing the parents is a bad family.
Mr. Menendez, on October 31st, 1989, did you receive a telephone call from Dr. Oziel?
Yes.
Where were you?
It's in the house in Beverly Hills.
And what did Dr. Oziel say to you? Oh, I'm sorry. Excuse me, I have to relocate.
He said that he had my brother in his office and that my brother had told him everything.
What did you say?
I believe I asked him what he meant by that, and he just said he didn't want to talk about it on the phone and I should come over.
Did you go over?
Yeah, he sounded very nervous and tense, and so I had a good feeling of what exactly they had talked about, so I definitely went over.
What did you think they had talked about?
I figured my brother had told him that what happened on Sunday, and I wasn't sure exactly what, but something to that effect, certainly that we were involved and that they might have talked about turning ourselves into the police or something to that effect.
So you drove over there? Is that correct?
I drove over, yeah.
How long did it take you to get there?
Just a couple minutes.
And how were you feeling when you walked into the office?
Nervous and afraid that my brother may have decided that we should turn ourselves into the police, and that Oziel, who I knew from previous occasions, had this information.
Did you trust Dr. Oziel?
No.
Were you upset with your brother?
Yes, I was very upset.
So from before you even walked into the office, did you think you knew what had happened?
I was not sure what had happened, and I didn't want to know what had happened until I heard what it was that they wanted to do.
What happened when you walked in the office?
I walked in and I sat down, and in the chair closest to his desk. And
How did he seem? How did Dr. Oziel seem?
he seemed very nervous.
How did your brother seem?
He seemed even worse, even more nervous, and just agitated, and I guess wondering what I was going to think. So I sat down, and Oziel wanted to tell me what had been said.
What did you say?
I told him that I didn't want to hear whatever my brother had told him.
Why?
Because I wanted to talk to Erik first, and I didn't know if they were, basically because I didn't know if he was going to go to the police or what they had decided together, that they had now called me and wanted me to agree to turn myself in, and I just felt that talking to Dr. Oziel at that point wasn't a good idea. I didn't want to do that.
So what did you do?
I just stayed. I didn't want to leave either. My brother was involved at this point, and I just basically wanted to hear what Dr. Oziel had to say.
Did you say anything to your brother?
At some point, my brother and I got into an argument, and I started shouting at my brother, basically. And
what were you saying to him?
I was upset that I felt I was having this conversation with Oziel, and at some point I expressed that I felt like my brother had in some way trusted Dr. Oziel more than me, and why did he go to Dr. Oziel and not me first? Because Dr. Oziel had said that Erik was suicidal and had been having a lot of emotional problems and might commit suicide, and that's why he came to him. And I felt like he should have come to me, and I felt hurt just to a large degree, and sort of betrayed by the fact that they had sort of gotten together and talked about things, and I had not had a discussion with my brother like this, really. We had not been able to talk about it. And so I was, in saying that to Dr. Oziel, my brother got very, I don't know if upset's the right word, but he was, in saying those things and not wanting to talk about what he had talked to Dr. Oziel about, he was feeling, I guess you could use the word upset. It wasn't that he was angry, but he was just very unhappy about that.
Were you angry?
I was angry.
Were you angry with your brother?
I was angry with him.
Were you frightened?
Of the situation, yes.
Were you emotional?
It was a very intense meeting, with me yelling at my brother, Oziel telling me that I seemed menacing to him, and me sort of actually feeling cornered, partly my own fault, because I didn't want to go and talk to them about what they wanted to talk about, yet I really couldn't leave. And
why didn't you want to talk about what they wanted? First of all, what did they want to talk about?
Well, just initially when I came in, Dr. Oziel wanted to tell me everything that he and Dr. Oziel, my brother and Dr. Oziel, had discussed, and I didn't want to hear it, and until I heard it from my brother first. And essentially, I just wanted to leave with my brother.
Did Dr. Oziel say anything to you about confidentiality?
Yes.
What did he say?
Well, he said that I seemed menacing to him, and that that there was potential confidentiality, but that if somebody threatened him, or if he felt threatened, that there would not be confidentiality, and he could just go to the police and with the information he had. And actually, I believe he said that he would be obligated to go, but I'm not positive. But he said that if he felt threatened, it wouldn't be confidential, but that there was supposed to be confidentiality, and if he wasn't threatened, then this would be confidential, and he couldn't go to the police even if he wanted to. And this long discussion about narrative, more like, about that.
Did you want him to go to the police?
No, I told him that that's exactly what I was afraid he was going to do.
Did you want him to feel threatened?
No, I wanted him to feel the opposite.
Why?
Because of what he just told me.
During the time that you were yelling at your brother and expressing how you felt about him having told this secret, how was your brother reacting?
He was crying, and he was sort of becoming hysterical, and at some point ran out of the room.
And what did you do when he ran out of the room?
I went to follow him.
What did Dr. Oziel do?
He wanted me to stay.
Why did he want you to stay?
Well, at some point he told me he wanted me to, either there or in the hallway. I confuse the area sometimes, but that he didn't feel comfortable with me leaving and the session ending that way, with Erik hysterical. And he told me that he felt threatened by my demeanor and that I had seemed menacing to him, and that he just felt very uncomfortable and wanted me to stay, at least, since my brother was clearly not going to stay. And I told him that I needed to take care of my brother, and I wanted to just talk to my brother first, and then we could come back.
Were you very firm about that, about wanting to take care of your brother?
Yes, and it was clear that that's what I was going to do. I was like leaving, and we were kind of like, he was kind of like following me. And again, I'm not sure if he followed us all the way outside, so this could have happened right outside or upstairs. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that I said goodbye to him in the hallway, like by where the elevators are. But I believe then he followed me anyway, downstairs, still saying that he felt uncomfortable and wanted me to go back upstairs with him, and me telling him no, and then we arranged that we would meet again.
Where did you go when you got downstairs?
We went, my brother was leaving. He got in his Jeep to leave. And I was trying to get my brother to relax, and while trying to get Oziel sort of to relax at the same time, and just tell him we'd come back. And I just didn't want to deal with Dr. Oziel. I wanted to talk to my brother, and he was sort of hysterical and ready to drive away. So at some point Oziel said okay, and I quickly just sort of, I believe he said we'd see him whenever the date was, November 2nd or something, but I'm not positive. He may have said, I'll call you or something like that. But we arranged to meet again. I agreed I would with Erik, and he went back upstairs.
Dr. Oziel went back upstairs? Is that yes?
Yes.
What condition was your brother in at that point?
He was crying, pretty frantic, upset with me.
Why was he upset with you?
For saying that that going to Dr. Oziel had been sort of a betrayal of our trust, and that I believe I said something upstairs about how much could he love me if he trusts Dr. Oziel more than his own brother when he's suicidal and so on. And so it was pretty intense for him, and I think he was upset, and I should not have said the things I said.
When you got to the Jeep, did you continue telling him that you thought that he was disloyal, or what were you
We didn't talk at the Jeep, really. He wanted to leave, and so he left, and I told him I'd talk to him at the house.
Did you go back to the house?
Yes.
And when you got back to the house, did you talk about what happened?
Yes.
And did he tell you what had happened?
I asked him once he had calmed down, and just don't remember the conversation completely, but basically just asked him what he had said. At that point I wanted to know what he had told Dr. Oziel, and he said that he had told him that we did it, and that nobody, I believe he said that nobody else knew that he had said this to Dr. Oziel, and that he was feeling very depressed and very suicidal, and that he couldn't come to me, that I was sort of unstable and changing my mind as to whether I wanted to play tennis or go to school or business, and that
let me ask you, did he give you the details of what he said to Dr. Oziel?
No, and I believe he said he did not give him, that he said he did not, he told him he didn't know why it happened.
Did you talk about going back to Dr. Oziel? Did you talk with your brother about going back to Dr. Oziel?
Well, we talked about whether we should go back or not.
And was a decision made as to whether you would go back?
Yes, we decided that we should definitely go back.
And why did you decide to go back?
Well, it was either never talk to him again and not go back and not have any more contact with him, or go back. And since he had felt threatened by me, and he had said this thing about confidentiality, I was very concerned that he was going to go to the police, especially if we didn't go back and just not return his calls or whatever. So my brother and I decided that it was definitely better to go back and try to just get him to relax and expressed to him that there was no problem, and basically see what Oziel wanted to do and feel him out and just sort of go with the flow and try to get him. The main thing was to just get him to relax so that he didn't run to the police. And so
Did you make some decisions yourself about what you were going to talk to him about?
Yes.
And what decisions did you make about what you were going to talk to him about?
What decisions did I make myself?
Yes.
Well, Erik had not talked to him about what had happened with Dad, and I certainly wasn't going to talk about it, and I felt that we shouldn't talk about it, that I just didn't want to, and I was glad that he didn't, and that we shouldn't. And I actually didn't feel we should talk about anything, as little as possible, partly in case he did go to the police, but mostly just didn't want to talk to him about it. And Erik had said to him that he didn't know why, and that Oziel seemed to think he could figure out why, and just go back and, from what I knew of Oziel, I figured he would do a good job figuring it out, and we would talk about, he knew about my relationship between my parents somewhat, my family a little bit, and we would talk about that. And assuming that things were going well, we could just sort of continue to see him.
Were you going to talk about the facts of the killings themselves?
No, because then we would have to talk about why, and we didn't want to do that. And so we just weren't going to volunteer it at this point, since Erik hadn't.
Did you go back to him then on November the 2nd?
Yes.
And Dr. Oziel said that he had told you both that he could be helpful to you in terms of describing the family constellation. That's what he's testified to here. Did he say something like that to you?
I think that's exactly what he said.
And what did that mean to you in describing the family constellation?
Just talking about the emotions involved in the family, the personality of my dad, my mom, the interaction in the family, and the emotions that could conceivably have led to something like this, and maybe figure out why this happened.
Were you willing to talk about those things with him?
Yes.
Now, when you went in on November the 2nd, can you describe for us how the session was conducted?
Basically, like a regular therapy session, sitting down, and him in his chair, and basically we talked about the family, like you said, the family constellation, and he would give his impressions from what he knew already and what he felt could have been going on that might lead to something like this. And he would sort of tell you, you would give some responses, and he would kind of tell you how he felt that you feel, and what you were feeling and what you might have been feeling before, and that could have led to this, and basically just talk about like the family dynamic, as he put it. And
were you volunteering a lot of information?
No, we were not volunteering information, very little.
So you said that Dr. Oziel would tell you what he thought you were thinking at the time, that type of thing?
Yeah, he talks a lot, and he just, he rambled on about what it was he felt was going on, and basically knew a lot more about my dad. My mom's a very secretive person. He didn't have a good understanding of that, and I didn't want to talk about it. But essentially, basically, the only thing that was discussed about her was that she was depressed, which he knew at some point in her life, and might even have been suicidal. And we may have told him that. And
Let me ask you, when he would give you these theories about what you were thinking or how you were feeling, was he right some of the times?
Yes.
Was he wrong some of the times?
Sometimes he was pretty far off base, but
Would you tell him when he was right? Would you say, yeah, that's the way we felt, or you were right about that?
sometimes if he asked us, we would tell him almost always yes.
What about
A lot of times he didn't. He believed that we didn't really know exactly how we felt.
How do you know he believed that?
Well, partly because we were telling him we didn't know why this had happened, and so he was he accepted that as, that we of course you don't know why, and there's just all these things going on in your family and the way you were brought up and in your mind, and just felt that he could piece it together through figuring out what was going on between everybody, and my mom's depression, my dad's controlling nature, and maybe he suggested that down the road we might be able to figure this out, get it out through hypnosis or get it out through some way. So a lot of times he didn't think we knew exactly how we felt.
So did you agree with him generally, with whatever conclusions he came up with about your family? Or would you tell him it's wrong?
No, I would basically agree. He would say it in a way that you just agreed, and he had a pretty good understanding of some of the issues, and so we stayed pretty much among those issues.
Were you eager to tell him a lot of things about your family?
Well, we knew what we didn't want to talk about, and I basically didn't want to tell him anything about my family if I could help it. I didn't want to be there. But part of the problem was, at least for me, was my brother was suicidal and depressed. And Oziel would say some things that made Erik feel better, like when he said that my mom was so depressed she would have wanted to be killed, and we'd probably done her a favor, he said. And we were both very depressed about my mom's death, and that made Erik feel better. And so those were things where he was not really correct, insofar that I don't think my mom was depressed to that point and suicidal when she died, but it made Erik feel better, so I just sort of agreed. So there were things like that he would say.
Dr. Oziel said that he told you that he had put tapes in safety deposit boxes. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did he tell you about having done that before for other patients or with other patients, that he'd put tapes in safety deposit boxes?
Yes.
What did he tell you in that regard?
For the hitman, he said he treated a hitman, and with certain situations, basically, I guess, that involved knowing about people that had died, he would take certain precautions. That was basically taping notes of his dictation and putting them in safety deposit boxes, and that's what he said he did with us.
And did you believe that he had done that?
Yes.
Dr. Oziel said that when you came in on November the 2nd, that you said that you and Erik had sat in the Jeep laughing and talking about killing him, that you told him that you and Erik had this conversation in the Jeep.
Right.
You remember him testifying to that?
Yes.
Was that true? Had you and your brother sat in the Jeep and talked about killing
No,
Dr. Oziel?
no, we didn't, and but we did discuss that because he felt that he said that.
Let
you
me
know,
stop you. First, did you have the discussion in the Jeep?
No, we never had any discussion in the Jeep.
Was your brother in a joking mood in the Jeep after
No, he
the
was.
October 31st
He
session?
ran out of the room, ran down. He was hysterical. He was trying to get the Jeep started, and he wouldn't wait around to talk. I just told him we'd talk at home, and he took off.
Did this conversation come up with Dr. Oziel on November 2nd? Was there some conversation about you and your brother sitting in the Jeep and plotting his murder?
Yes. He said that in talking about how, basically at the beginning of the session when he was saying that he was not happy with the way that the last session ended, that he had felt threatened by, basically by me, my behavior and the way I was looking at him and so on. That he had this image after it was over that we were in the Jeep, sitting down in the Jeep plotting to kill him. And I told him we hadn't had any discussion in the Jeep and that was ridiculous and that we weren't doing that. And he was basically joking, but he also seemed concerned.
Did he still seem nervous?
Yes.
Was that of some concern to you?
It was
That he
of
was nervous?
great concern to me
Why?
because we were there. That's basically why we were there, because we knew he was concerned and we didn't want him to go to the police. And he was saying that he could do that since he had felt threatened.
And when he told you about, wondering if you were sitting in the Jeep plotting to kill him, he said that you said something like it wouldn't look too good if he disappeared. Remember him testifying to that?
Yes, I remember that.
Did you say that?
No.
He testified that there was a discussion in which there was a discussion about whether somebody was willing to live in fear. And Dr. Oziel said that he wasn't willing to live in fear, and he said that you said, neither did my father. Now, was there any discussion about living in fear with Dr. Oziel? Do you remember any discussion of that nature?
Yes.
And what was that discussion, as you remember it?
That was in talking about my dad's personality and the fact, and I was expressing that my dad was a fearless person, and that there had been times when he had intense negotiations with essentially gangster-connected people like Barry Gordy and so on, that he wasn't afraid by any of the threats that he would get from time to time, that he didn't choose to live his life in fear. And that's something that I often said to people, that my dad never chose to live in fear and that he was essentially fearless. And I think I told that to Detective Zoller too.
Did Dr. Oziel tell you that he was going to try to work with you to try to resolve whatever issues you had emotionally that had led you to commit the crimes? Do you remember him saying something like that?
Yes.
And was that what the purpose of all of this was, of meeting with him,
Yes.
from his perspective?
Yes.
I'll restate the question, please.
Is that what he indicated
Yes.
his perspective was?
Right.
And did you tell him that you were in agreement with that?
That I was in agreement with what?
With the idea of trying to figure out what had caused you to commit the crimes. Did you tell him that you were there to work on that with him?
Yes.